Playing old school versus new school. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at AAU Media, and visit our website www.aaumedia.com. Call us at 1-833-369-1444 extension 1 and leave us an inspirational message or request. You're listening to All About Us Radio. You're listening to All About Us Radio. We're live streaming 24/7, playing old school versus new school. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at AAU Media, and visit our website www.aaumedia.com.
Greetings, folks. Greetings, everyone. This is Vonda, and I am your host here on All About Us Media. Welcome to Mo Money Mondays. So tonight we've got a jam-packed show. I'm very excited. So I have some friends that have done me the honors of joining us tonight. And I will say, now, there's a young lady here that I've actually met a long time ago, and she is moving and shaking things up. So I would like to introduce the founders of the Claudia Jones School for Political Education, Mr. Gato Martinez Bentley, and Miss Deborah Johnson. Welcome, welcome. Hey there, guys.
Thank you so much.
How are you tonight?
Great. Happy to be here.
Blessed.
Good. You guys are a good-looking couple there, if I do say so myself.
Girl, we keep getting that.
You keep getting that, right?
We do. God is good. We do.
Meant to be. Y'all look good. Y'all look good. So, okay. So, folks, just to let you know, what's this all about, right? Who is Deborah and Gato? So they are on the front lines, actually, helping and educating people of color, our brown and black people, have their voice, and, forging ahead, making sure that they are heard in this highly political climate. And so, guys, you guys are doing a lot right now. They are out of the DC area. Which is amazing. You know that I'm here in New York, but we are so excited that you are here. You've got some special events coming up that I'm looking forward to hearing more about. And but I am very, very interested and excited, and I want you to share just a little bit, because you spoke to this earlier when we were in the chat room, about how you met.
Well, I have been single for a few years. And I decided that I wanted to date again. And so I checked out Black People Meet. And we met maybe a few weeks being on the site. I wasn't interested at first. He was kind of relentless. He wouldn't take no for an answer. And I'm glad he didn't. Yes. We've been together 3 years.
Wow. So this really works.
Yeah, it does.
That's amazing.
It's working, yeah.
Congratulations to the two of you. You are a stunning couple, and I'm single, so I'm encouraged now.
Be encouraged, Rhonda. Be
encouraged. Yes, I'm so encouraged. You guys look really good together. And
out of this union, I've been told all my life I've been funny, right? He kept pressing me to try to be a comedian. Guess what, Vonda? I'm a comedian now.
You're a comedian.
Yes, my stage name is Lady Mama D.
Lady Mama D. So do you perform?
Have you performed gigs, but with the pandemic, it's been slow. But yeah, my last gig was 2 months ago.
Congratulations. Wow, that's really powerful. up there in age. So you guys are you're birthing all of these new things in your aging.
It's never too late.
Well, tell me about your latest project, your non-for-profit that's going on.
You go ahead.
Want me to go?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things is when we met, I told her about some folks that I known for a while. Two of them are from activists from back in the 70s. We were all in an organization called the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression, where we wanted to make sure to help Brother Reverend Ben Chavis and the Wilmington 10 in North Carolina. So we did all kind of media fundraising, and we went down to North Carolina to show our solidarity to the Wilmington 10 and Reverend Ben Chavis. And so when we came back, we had so many things we had to do, also along with the budgeting, the movement against apartheid in South Africa. So we worked together real tight and worked in the community to help start an early movement. And so that movement spawned the movement and divestment against apartheid and racism and racist South Africa. And, it's called the June 16th Coalition. And it later ended up into other organizations, but by and large, it ended up to the movement Free South Africa.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Fast forward, in meeting Cado, and there's two other founders, which are Arturo Griffith. He's a famous union organizer, and Jaime Cruz. They were key in this because, and being friends, we just started meeting, talking about how we felt about how everything is happening in DC and the DMV, and how we're not liking it, and we should start speaking up. We just started sharing our ideals, and before you know it, we started an organization.
Wow.
Community
That's powerful. You guys are doing some powerful work in the DC area.
We're trying.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw one of your recent flyers and it said, oops, there goes
The neighborhood.
there goes in the neighborhood. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you imagine, okay, so we're both born and raised in DC.
We're Washingtonians.
And so we like to hang out. So we're hanging out. And I'm like, okay, this is so crazy. Remember, there was a time when you didn't see white people in DC like that. They were spats. And now they're taking over. And like, we're spats. You know? But it is what it is. We're trying to change things because we want young people to be empowered. We just met with a bunch of Howard University students last Tuesday night.
Yeah, Tuesday night. And how many students?
It was about 20 students, and it was a great experience. These young people are intense, they're focused, and we're talking about powerful. They know what they want and they see what's going on. They're making a difference. They're not scared to speak up. So it's a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah, not enough was spurred on with the Black Lives Matters movement.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So y'all have been on the front lines. Now, you know, when we talk about gentrification and transforming communities economically, you know, on a fiscal level, there are pros and cons. There are definitely pros and cons. You know, there's one idea that, well, isn't there enough for everyone? And there's another idea of like, well, we belong here. And so it's not so black and white all the time. Now, I'm in New York, completely different situation. I'm in New York, but I was born and raised in Harlem. And so Harlem for many, many years, at least as I was growing up, was, you know, a ghetto. All of it, not just some of it. All of it was the ghetto. Even though I grew up close to the Columbia University area, City College, it was still, you know, anything above 96th Street was the hood, the ghetto. And with gentrification, it was so interesting how they were able to move the ghetto. You know, all of a sudden it was no longer 96th Street. Now you could go up to, it was 116th Street and above. And then it was 125th Street and above, you know, and as the communities were gentrified or, you know, more endowed with a higher economic community, the ghetto was pushed into other places, and what was the ghetto was no longer the ghetto, and they began to rename it.
Mhm.
And but I moved into the ghetto at 23, like literally the hood, very dangerous,
Mhm.
filled with drugs and alcohol and people that were struggling with addiction. And I
Mhm.
tell this story on my platform very often, when I speak to, managing your money over time and what your influence can do over time. And I was also an activist in a community where we transformed. And I will admit, I waited for the gentrification. I looked forward to the gentrification because I was very clear that the neighborhoods had been suffering for so long that they had lost their voice,
Mhm.
and that diversity needed to happen in order for us to be able to lift ourselves up. That's how bad it had gotten. And so, as a young person, when I moved into a community that was devastated, I struggled with having my brown and black people jump on the bandwagon.
Mhm.
So I wanted you to speak to that because it sounds so simple. Like
It's
we just need a leader, and
Mhm.
then we can all, and we'll teach and we'll know what to do. And I know that from experience, that's not always the case. People are so conditioned, and they've been so devastated that
Mhm.
they don't believe that they have a voice. It was very challenging to get people to jump on our crusade. And
Mhm.
we had to learn to go through many different alleys in order to get them back to believing that their voice mattered. So, how do you deal with that?
You made a great point. I'm having issues with sharing with my family. You try to educate people, and it's like, what is that saying? You can't do better till you know better. So you're trying to educate our people. And I think back to when I bought my house 20 years ago. And here I am sharing my good news because I want you to have what I have. And you're here I am sharing it. I'm like, there's nothing I'm doing you can't do. And a lot of times we as a people, we don't appreciate advice or information, or I'm trying to uplift you and inform you so you can get this too. And they're like, why are you telling me this? Right? I'm telling you this because I want to bless you. That's why. And I tell people this, I say, you need to see the writing on the wall. I mean, look at this, Vonda. My mortgage is like $800 a month. My mortgage now. Where are you going to find an apartment for $800 a month? Not in DC. Not in DC. You're not going to find it. So the same people who wouldn't listen back then, they're listening now. They wish they had us listened back then. And Carter, what do you got to say about it?
Well, we at the Claudia Jones School, we look at this as a historical process, and use our dialectics to unlock what is happening. And from what we can see, the historical trends were after the great migrations from the south up to the industrial north and things like that. We had to deal with all kind of Jim Crow and legislation that hindered us from really moving into homes at one time. So we had, as a people, we had to make sure we regrouped and then organize ourselves into organizations uh, and so forth, like the NAACP and the Urban League. And so we could have a legal arm to fight to get these areas that were either Jim Crow or they were red line and many things. We used that part of the movement to open up other areas for our progress as a people. Now, having said that, what we're seeing now in the northern areas and probably in some parts of the south, in that probably it is that we were faced with then a reaction to the movements that we were making and advances we were making by further redlining and further legal shackles. And in the position we were finding, like my parents did, they moved from a very depressed neighborhood out of an apartment in a park called up northeast Washington D.C. up by Gallaudet University and by the famous 8th Street, which was almost like the Black Wall Street business district in U Street. And in that migration, folks were able, like my parents, to get a home, 3-bedroom home,
Yes.
yard, front yard. The problem that happened, that's when we got hit with the war on crime, but it was not only that phase, then it became the war on drugs. So it was a continuation of finding ways to manipulate our advances to turn them into disadvantages. So once those drugs started getting into community, from heroin to even to the point of crack cocaine, we started to see folks who worked hard, Black families who worked hard, got jobs in the district government, federal government, and they were established. They became a part of the middle class, lower to upper. As a result, when some of these folks who had their life savings in their homes passed away, it was their children. And in many cases, their children were in an environment where I'm getting all this money. What do I do?
Sell the house.
Sell the house. Maybe I can get something better in Maryland, and maybe even a nice apartment and get a really nice ride or something. The thinking wasn't preceded by the counseling that many homeowners who were young, maybe in their 30s or a little older, were not ready to see that much money come into their bank accounts in their hands and opted out for various other vices. So it kept growing. So as it grew, the war on drugs grew, but it really realized it was a war on Black folks. It was a war on the people, on the masses. And so
Justicide.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we started losing things we had, and it started opening. And so there's so many documents written by the Johnson administration, and then further by other administration, the Nixon and Reagan administrations, about what to do in these cases. I can't think of his name, but I know there was a policy person behind the Johnson administration that talked about this war on poverty, that in this war on poverty, there will be so much land that can be used in a certain location or geographic area. But once the murder of an assassination of Dr. King, Martin Luther King, but Malcolm X first, then Martin Luther King, we've had so many different forms of rebellion. Some people just look at Oklahoma, but it started before Oklahoma because we were only defending ourselves as a people. And in any case, there was a war like World War I or World War II. A lot of Black servicemen came back not only with sometimes the illness from the war, but they came back with skills. And so when the U.S. government saw the switch in what happened after the assassination of Dr. King, they realized that the so-called burning and so-called riots, that these areas would be for many years, it would have to go vacant, because who's going to build there now? What banks or what savings and loan or what real estate people will invest in that area for the people that were originally there? Like I have people in my family that was originally at one point living in Georgetown. Now, Georgetown is known as very upper mobile, and it's wealthy now. But
it
back
used to
in the
be
day,
predominantly black
and farmlands.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw farmlands, I thought I was in the country, but I was actually in Georgetown and other places of DC, because they were doing that farming coming up from the after the World War II, and all these different gardens were coming up, because then with that area right there, people wanted to have produce in a yard like we did in South Carolina or North Carolina or down in Mississippi or Georgia. So it changed the situation from the Black Belt onto now a belt where we was becoming green Black Belt. That made those areas even more expensive or more profitable. And so that's one era. But the era we going through now is it's just an extension of that, because we still have a war on Black America now, on Latin America, Brown America, and it's extending the misery and the pain in our communities to try to pay their rent, to try to pay their mortgage bills. So we are still dealing with a system that has systematically found to try to stop us every step we take. When we take one step back, they push us back 2 or 3 steps. And it's like, didn't my grandparents own that? And you wonder what transpired. So now we're getting up a wake-up call. This is definitely a wake-up call. That's why a lot of us have seen what has happened with Black Lives Matters and everything. So, and
on that note, speaking of wake-up calls, right? There was a famous write-up in the Washingtonian magazine 20 years ago. I got it as a gift, and I kept this article because it spoke of gentrification in DC. No one was paying attention. They didn't think it was going to be so dramatic and almost overnight.
Yeah.
I remember when, after reading the article, I'm driving through Northwest DC, and it was kind of weird to see a white family on one porch, and next door to them was a crackhead family, you know? And this was so common, and people just weren't paying attention. They took it for granted, right? I work for a real estate company, and I'm seeing people struggling trying to buy a home. They can't afford it. What is our average house in DC now? Like 400,000 to 700,000, right?
Starting east,
right. And I'm talking about even my daughter who has some natural savings. Her and her fiance, they decided just yesterday they moved to a new home. They had to rent. They can't afford to buy right now.
Yeah.
So they put their dream on hold. So this is what's going on, and it's a sad state of America, if you ask me. But
poverty is growing.
It is growing. It is growing.
Well, and we need the education that you guys are providing. We really need the education. You know, I could play devil's advocate and say that, you know, well, there is some responsibility in the fact that, and I see this in other states. I have property in Philadelphia. It's very prevalent in Philadelphia what's happening. The ghetto is rampant, and gentrification is replacing that, right? But you know, as a culture, as a people, we have a responsibility to create legacy. And the only way, and my company is called the Jameson Legacy Group. So I am very passionate about this, and I speak about this often. That you know, those great grandparents that were the first to buy the homes. You know, I believe that we fell short as a people, working so hard. Because we were taught that we needed to work hard. We had to work hard in order to maintain. So, you know, we didn't know that we should be teaching the children how to pay the mortgage, who the mortgage is held by, who fixes the roof, who we call when the boiler goes down. And I've watched families where, you know, the mom and dad maybe weren't in the picture, and grandma's taking care of the kids, and grandma transitions. And now the children are in the house. They don't know about paying taxes. They don't know who holds the mortgage. And they're living their best life until it comes and it's collected. You know what happens then, right? When you don't pay the taxes, and then you get a note. And now we have another family that's homeless. So when you speak about education, and maintaining legacy in our communities, it is so important that we share the financial responsibility, you know, the what it really takes to own, to maintain. We should not have to learn that on the fly. We should not be learning that based on loss.
You know what? I'm gonna say,
getting it.
A lot of times, you're trying to put the word out to educate people, but it falls on deaf ears. I used to work at Fannie Mae, and my sister is like a financial guru. She's a loan officer, and she would come up there and do financial literacy classes. Sometimes you didn't get but a half a room full of people. She was also teaching about credit repair. We as a people sometimes don't want to listen and help ourselves. We got to start listening and help ourselves.
Yes, but we can't give up. We've got to keep going. I fall in this category all the time. Speaking to, you know, the idea of what we consider important. Okay. We often can't pay the mortgage or can't pay the rent, but, you know, that same person, what are they driving? We see this all the time. What are they driving? What are
Yes.
they carrying on their arm?
Yes.
You understand? And understanding the value and being forward thinking to realize that we as a collective have got to work together, you know. So we are definitely faced with a generation that is in the now, the moment.
Right. And as even with every trend, culturally, music, everything that I'm a parent of 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters. And they've been financially literate for many years because of the environment that you bring as a family. When you have to bring this to your kids, because you never know when it's your time. And so as that's one of the things I think we need to deal with more. But I'm gonna just say one thing. Here's a quote here. Quote, history, despite its unwrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be relived again. And that's my sister Maya Angelou.
Beautiful.
I read that because the things that we have done, because I've seen doing the like you say from Harlem, the Black Renaissance, and there were people, even the hairstylists who made their own beauty creams. Folks that went up, and the Black middle class was growing. And then as you see, because of the United States, this unbridled greed for global domination of economic markets, we end up with a war here, a war there. And as we can see, as we can see that once we go into wars, it's very hard for that generation to regain what had been gained before because of all kinds of situations, mental, physical, social. So these things, but now we don't have to go through these things without assistance, without people like ourselves, like the Claudia Jones School for Political Education. That's why we're doing this event, to make sure that's coming up on the 30th, to bring hope, or bring a sense of awareness and urgency. And so I just want to, the Claudia Jones School for Political Education, and this is our mission and our vision. We create opportunities for the community to explore complex issues in an intrinsic way, but also an intersectional way. And that's about Claudia Jones there. And that is by engaging workers, intellectuals, folks from trade union and all over these various sectors to come together and strategize, come up with strategies, make sure we bring techniques and methods to reverse some of the despairingly trouble situations. I mean, we could bring to you some of the figures about where the United States is right now in regards to gentrification. It's hellacious. It's hellacious. It's like, and it's such a just an incredibly depressing rate. I mean, for some folks, and we can see it even right now in the newspaper with Congress. We got 2 people in the Democratic Party. If we could get that budget where there's schooling, universal college for young folks.
They're cutting everything socially that we need.
Right. That could help enable people to get back on their feet. And as they say, and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. Well, how you going to bootstraps if you don't really have any straps or boots
to begin with?
It's
I want to piggyback off of what you said earlier.
You know what? But wait 1 sec. We're gonna pause for just a hot second.
Okay.
And we're gonna go to commercial. Okay. We'll be right back.
Throw and Tuck. It's handmade by myself, and you only can get it here, and it's patent, and it's only here at Rococo Design. It's like a regular pillow, or you can take the blanket out like so, fluff up the pillow, open up your blanket, wrap it around yourself, and then you can lay on your sofa and relax with your pillow throw and tuck. When you're done with it, just flip it over. When you don't want the blanket anymore, you just fold it over twice. Fold it over twice again. Fold it over. And tuck it in the back. And there you go. You're back to the pillow throw and tuck. Rococo Design.
All right. And we're back. I am here this evening with Deborah Ngato, activist out of the DC area.
Yeah.
And so, Deborah, you were saying.
I was saying, piggybacking off what you said earlier, it starts at home. You know, I had a girlfriend years ago who made far more than I did, and she was always broke before she got paid again. And she would say to me, she would say, I don't know how you do it. How do you do it? I said, it's not complicated. You have to discipline yourself. That means no catching cabs for work, period. No buying lunch at work, period. No buying breakfast. That means you bank everything.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's a mind thing. And because one, in my opinion, your kids always watch you, they're sponges. So you got to start from the beginning, right? I had a friend of mine when my kids were babies. I took my kids everywhere, especially food shopping. And she said, why would you take your kids food shopping? I said, I'm their first teacher. They have to learn.
Absolutely. So important.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of young persons need to understand the importance of being involved in every aspect of their children's lives and to discuss finances at an early age. And enough of us are not doing that. We're not doing that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And you know, my family was guilty of it. I don't think my sibling learned to pay bills until he was in his 40s. And, you know, it's an epidemic in our culture for whatever reason. Sometimes it's guilt. Sometimes it's just, you know, our parents are feeling they didn't quite do enough because their struggle was, you know, became our struggle. And so there's so many different reasons, but you are so right with mindset.
Mm-hmm.
We have to change the mindset. We have got to change our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do have I wanted you to speak to, you know, I heard you, Gatto, talking about some of the statistics. So when it comes to, you know, what would you say, what state has the highest level of gentrification in the U.S.?
If you ask me, it's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I would say DC.
Yeah.
I'd say DC. I think Philadelphia comes behind that. I believe there's some states, and New York obviously is in that.
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco. Yeah, and even in the LA. I mean, my oldest daughter went to LA to see if my granddaughter was going to go down to Stanford or something like that. And she said she just driving around, she said she never seen so many homeless human beings everywhere, on the bridges, everywhere. And that is something a nation that's one of the most powerful, one of the most richest nations should not even fathom.
Shouldn't be a subject.
Right? It shouldn't be. It should have been almost like it should be. If you're going to outlaw something, all these young men and brothers who are out there and they get busted up and locked up, incarcerated, and become a part of the prison industrial project for years, decriminalize that marijuana. So as opposed to having the right criminals, and the criminals I see are the ones that willingly will raise rents, willingly make sure that people are on the streets, are homeless, and willingly, that should be the one that's really a crime made out of. In other words, if this is a democratic system, is it democratic for you to be homeless and penniless and hungry in a nation as wealthy as this? Or is it the way that we see it at the Claudia Jones School for Political Education, that we have to look at it this way? We've been criminalized for many centuries, you know, and some people say, don't talk about 1619 Project or this, so don't talk about that. But what the truth is, the truth lays under that. And as our scholars and young folks and intellectuals uncover more of that history and reveal it to us, more people will become scared who feel like they got their inheritance from their parents, but their parents had maybe 20 to maybe 100 slaves. So we also firmly they're calling for reparations. You can't place a people in a condition and keep the boot down on them so long and think that they are supposed to emerge
above it.
Right, but we do.
Mhm.
We rise.
We
rise, and so we have to look at that and look at the fact that there's so many women that are on these homeless rolls with children.
Yes.
With children.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got folks in
sorry.
front of you
Carry
who
on.
want lunches and for hungry children. The Black Panther Party made sure there was food for the kids.
Lunch program.
Breakfast programs.
Yes.
So we have examples of where our people tried and have tried to counter this whole dialogue of that. Well, y'all need to do this, you need to do that. No, we need to know that we need to hold folks accountable for folks' behavior. I don't care if it was your great grandpappy, Actually, to say this, and I don't feel any shame because they were wonderful people. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother and grandfather were freed slaves of Dr. Mudd, who is he's legend for working on John Wilkes Booth right after he shot him. Now, they told my grandparents if they learned how to read, they would be free. Dr. Mudd. They taught themselves how to read, like many of our ancestors did, through reading the Bible.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Was a comeback there.
Right.
Well, and one of the only books that we had access to
That's
also
right.
at that time was the Bible.
That's
Was the
right.
Bible.
That's
Right. That was the Bible. That's true. I do agree, though. And I will say, even here in the parts that I am a little further north, the homeless population is alarming, particularly because I am seeing more and more young people
Yeah. We have
on their own.
Yeah.
And I am 59 years young. I have never seen numbers like what I'm seeing now. It's alarming. I tell a story of driving just through Harlem, and there is a young Caucasian male in his 20s, huddled in the corner outside of a bank, shooting up. So
Oh, stop.
something is definitely has shifted here lately. And the thing is that it was just a matter of time, right, before it's no longer just our communities, right? The spread is
It's like a
widening.
It's a cancer.
Right.
It's a cancer. It's
And you
hitting
think
all
that-
communities, actually.
It is.
What started in our communities has now, and that's it was disturbing to begin with. So
Mhm.
the idea that it is spinning out of control and it's affecting so many is alarming, especially our young people. But when it comes to, okay, well, who do you think is benefiting the most from this new wave of gentrification? Because yes, now wait a minute, I'm not done.
Mhm.
Yes, we do see mostly Caucasians taking over ownerships. We also do see wealthy people of color taking over as well, and not being as embracing, or maybe, can I say, forgetting where they have come from.
I agree. I've seen a lot of young Black professionals, and what they're doing is they're buying these houses up that families are losing, and they're investing in them and flipping them. They're not thinking about the family; they're thinking about the bottom line, their pockets. So, yeah, that too goes back to education. We got to start educating ourselves.
We do, because what's happening is that we are, the lines of color are getting blurry,
Mhm.
where everything is green.
Mhm.
Everything is green.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. I mean, considering that considering the money, I saw a social media post that said something about this. You know, it spoke to the amount of money that we spend on our military. How
Mm.
dare we have
Oh my God.
homeless and
Mhm.
going without food?
Mhm.
Bloated
Mhm.
military budget. As we speak, United States, along with now Australia, along with the Brits and others in this global, I guess, global fight for power,
Mhm.
are basically they're putting themselves in a situation where they think that China will somehow bow down or be lesser of an economic power. Well, that's because they built the socialist system. And so, I mean, when you do that in that way, they've done it. They make what, how many thousands of products on assembly line from this area to that area, and we are large consumers.
Mhm.
So not only does China become like a number one enemy, which out of almost nowhere, because I always thought it was Russia, and before that the Soviet Union, and now it's China. And the thing about that is China is outproducing so many other nations at an incredible rate
Oh,
that many of these nations will be held in debt to China,
yes.
and they're holding almost like a full hand. You know, it's like
Including our country.
right.
I mean,
Mhm.
we've sold out.
That's
You
right.
know, as much as they've tried to produce in America, I know manufacturers, small businesses that said, you know, I really tried, but I had to go to China because they've got the best prices. It's like,
Every-
you know,
Everything is being outsourced. So, for instance,
Yeah.
and me looking for a new job, all the recruiters are Indian. It's just mind blowing. Most recruiters are Indian.
That's a labor international labor market,
Mhm.
which obviously many live in poverty there, and it's such a large country as well. You know, they almost have, I guess, 1 billion people. So in the sense of India and China and Pakistan and all these other nations, you can't use military might to force them to change their behaviors from wanting to live better. That's what we want to do. We
Yeah,
want to live
that's
better.
what we want to do.
China can't become an enemy because they are doing what is, asked of them,
Right.
what is deemed important. And
Mhm.
people ask you, say, if you've been to China, and I asked a couple of people I know, have you been to? They said, yeah, I went to People's Republic. I said, where do you see the homeless? They said, well, I really couldn't tell you where the homeless was. I ain't seen any, but
Mhm.
a lot of people get into different apartments, things. They may be small or whatever, but they're living a better life and a more quality life than we are. Now, here's the thing: as even in that pie, that economic pie may grow bigger,
Mhm.
but with the trillionaires flying out into space and everything, it makes it smaller. That's why I like listening to Bernie Sanders and others, because they give you those figures of that. Hold on, for how many percentage of the poor, and then they give you the percentage of how many the wealthy and how small that group is, how minority, not even a minority anymore. They're like specks, but they're wealthy, billionaire and trillionaire specks, and so their lives is better while other people's lives in the United States get worse. So
Yeah.
while the rich get richer, it's an old saying: the poor gets poorer. And so this is what's happening with us.
Yeah. The poor is shifting. I mean,
Right.
considering now low income is considered, what's the income for considered for low income is something like, I think,
What, 25, 27?
no, well, I don't know. Here in my city, it's more like for a household.
Oh,
The
correct.
household income guidelines or median is something like $60,000, $70,000 for a household is considered low income.
And that, I think that's in sense because of the fight back by the unions, even though the unions have been decimated. When I first started teaching in DC, I made like 29,000. And when I finished, I was also, along with the after school program, I was making about close to 60. But when I started off, it was very hard to survive on my own. And my father, who was of the military, had to say it. He said, if you do 3 things, it's time for you to go.
Mhm.
And it's time to go, time to leave.
Mhm.
And I fit two of the categories, you know. And one of them is if you had an afro, you was going around saying Black Power, you got to go. Well, I had a comb kind of in my head, and I was doing Black Power. And so he said the other one is if you're gay, and he used the term, excuse me, folks, a faggot, you got to go. And he said, now if you out there and you're talking about something like socialism or Marxism, you got to go. And I looked at him and I said, damn. He said, it's time for you to go. He looked at my mother and said, Audrey, it's time for this your boy to go. So it was, you know, when you grow up in a military household, they make it really cut and clear, straight down the line. And that is, I did this and I fought in World War II and in Korea and 7 years in Vietnam. And I got a son that's talking like this. So I realized, I said, it's time for me. I get in a good program to graduate and start teaching and impart some of this knowledge about how we struggle.
Okay.
How do we win?
Fair.
Mhm.
So there's expression.
That's fair. That's fair.
Is fair.
That's fair. So real quickly, you've named your school after Claudia Jones. School the people. Tell us real quickly, who was Claudia Jones?
Yeah, that's to say it succinctly. She was from Trinidad, a Caribbean woman, and as a Caribbean woman, she faced a lot of hardships when she was still living in Trinidad and Tobago. Her mother came here to work to make everything better for her children.
Mhm.
And so she took one of her children to be up in New York and worked in a garment factory. Literally, when she passed away, she had worked her fingers to the bone. But she got Claudia here, and in Claudia coming here, Claudia got turned on, literally, when she got here about the struggle against racism and the struggle against what was seemingly apartheid American system then. And she went and she couldn't think anything other than that and went all the way down to see what was unfolding with the Scottsboro Boys
Mhm.
trial. And she said there she met wonderful people, you know, in the, you know, in picket lines and things like that. And anybody from Harry Belafonte to Paul Robeson, she knew and got to meet. And then she got involved in the movement and became a writer for the excuse me, the Daily World. So she got herself, moved herself from, and became a very educated woman. And so she became a writer, a poet. She did a screenplay. And she was also one of the founders of the theory of the three oppression theory. And that is, she was oppressed as a woman. She was also oppressed as a Black woman, a Black person, and also as a worker. So she took that, and it became a very good theme for many of the early people who ended up being faced by the House Un-American activities. So she became what they called back then a Reds. And as a sister in the movement, as a sister in the Communist Party, the United States didn't want to put up with her, so they locked up on certain charges, like for speaking against America as a foreigner, and her charges mounted each time they would arrest her. Then she got health problems, and they said we can't allow this woman to keep speaking like this because she's going to become like another martyr or another Messiah. They had strong. They used it on Fred Hampton. They used it on Malcolm X. They used it on Dr. King, George Jackson. If you do a certain behavior, Angela Davis, you became a threat just in what you said. You didn't have to do nothing.
Right.
So
right. Well, we know what that's about.
Yeah, they deported her back to Trinidad, but the British caught wind of it and they said we can't allow this to happen because this woman will get murdered in Trinidad with that regime that was there then. So they allowed her to come into Britain, and that's where she started the carnival in Britain. Now it's one of the largest carnivals in the world, spread from Britain to Germany and all these other places.
And the first Black newspaper.
And the first Black newspaper that was also Caribbean. So she became a Pan-Africanist as well. And so whenever people like Paul Robeson or so many different notoriety folks, Harry Belafonte, all of them came there. Sidney Poitier, go to Britain. When they went to Britain, they would go to her house, and they would go and they would.
Wow.
They would literally party. They would be doing calypso, and they would be doing, yeah. It was beautiful, but we also had to bring up that with this beautiful family, so many people were under the gun that stayed in the United States because of those people like Nixon and J. Edgar Hoover and so many others that we've seen pop up time and time again, like the so-called actor president.
Reagan.
the Reagan. And so these folks were afraid of of the people because they were boxers or like Muhammad Ali. They were afraid of them because of their words. And they took it quite literally. Some of these people won't be able to make it to too many more days. Mm-hmm. So that situation made it possible for the Pan-African movement and other movements to grow with solidarity from the United States. Some people say the movement just developed with Kwame Nkrumah and Secretary and so many in Africa, but it coalesced together, and so whenever someone was bleeding in Angola or Mozambique or Ghana, they were bleeding here as well. So that made it closer, so that Black people understood their worth around the world and started to feel that their history would soon come back to haunt some of these people who did so many things wrong to us. And they are. You can feel the fright in their voices when they're on the House floor or whatever. And it's like, well, you can't pass this law or pass this in the schools. It's like,
no, that's why they don't want to talk about critical race theory.
That's what
they don't want to talk about it. It's going to bring up it's going to open up a wound.
The can of worms there. Yeah.
It's opening up.
So this is something that we need to start talking about, especially with our youth.
We'll find
you. Because a lot of my kids know, his kids know.
Oh,
but
yeah, my girl.
Anytime a friend of my son, I kid you not, was not aware of who Malcolm X was, what does that tell you?
Whoa.
This young man was in his mid-20s.
Whoa.
His parents were killed when he was young. So his grandmother raised him. That says a lot right there.
Right, it was that ear.
Grandma didn't know. Grandma didn't tell him because she didn't know. And for him to be like in his mid-20s, he had no clue about Malcolm X.
Yeah, but also you have to make sure that we hold accountable, because I'm a former DC public school teacher, so you got to hold that accountable, that should have been brought up in within the curriculum from the get-go, from the very start. So this is the time, the hour of reckoning. And we feel very strongly that the Lord is leading us to rise up. And as the brother from Grenada, Walter Rodney, he said, forwards ever. Maurice backwards never. Maurice Bishop from that small island that the United States did what? They invaded because they was building an airport. So a lot of these questions we want to bring up, so it makes our youth want to study hard, and makes our youth want to know, and then it helps the aid in your youth leadership and think and be leadership.
Yes, and think.
Move us forward.
Excellent. Excellent. Mm-hmm. You guys, you have got your work cut out for you. What an incredible mission. So grateful. You guys are courageous. We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to show your flyer, but first, will you tell us a little bit? You have an event coming up. It is the first of your organization. Please do tell us.
Okay, we have an event coming up at a local restaurant, and it's owned by a young Black woman. We're proud of this young woman. She's a Howard alumni. And we're doing it there. I performed there before. It's a great vibe. And we want to get the word out about speaking up, letting your voice be heard, be aware, know your rights, know what's going on, and also get involved.
Yes, get involved.
And we've gone to many protests, and we're seeing a lot. It's a proud thing to see.
Yes.
So many young people coming out in droves, more than us, more than us.
Right.
Yes.
And they're coming out. We went to one. What was that? We went to a van thing. What was it? What do you call it when you're driving through the city to get to your destination? And I forget what it was, but we had a protest we were heading to, and we're just watching the sea of cars drive by. And it was a bunch of young white people from out of state who came here to support us.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A car,
caravan, yes.
Right.
And it was a beautiful thing to witness so many young people coming out and letting their voices be heard.
All color
Oh, it was the rainbow.
Nationality.
It was the
Yeah.
rainbow.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And I'm pleased to say you are absolutely correct. Not everyone is pleased with their history. So it is quite momentous to see all sorts of young people coming out,
Amen.
supporting and using their entitlement
Mm.
to help move us forward as a people.
That's a
I'm happy to hear you acknowledge that that is happening. It is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely happening. There are so many young folks that are not down with
No.
the skinny as it's been in
No.
the past.
No.
And
Still in the fight.
well, I applaud you. Let's see if we can get your flyer up.
We're
Okay.
very proud of
I know that. Are we able to do that? There we go.
you.
Guys, happening in DC, October 30th. This is fantastic. I wish you the greatest success. But you guys, you know, this lies in your heart. And I do believe that
Much love.
when it comes from your heart, you there is nothing but it's nothing but a winning situation.
Mm-hmm.
It is nothing but a winning situation.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are fantastic. You are so cute. I am so encouraged.
Oh,
Look
no.
at that.
I love him. I love him.
Some black love, you know.
Right?
I love me some black love. No, but I want to wish you much success on your mission. And I can't wait to come through the DC area because I do get down there at least twice a year.
All right, Vaughn.
Happy to support. Deborah, so wonderful seeing you again. And I'm very proud of you guys. I'm very proud of you guys. This is quite a mission. We need more folks like you to help, you know, really commit. That's what it is.
Oh,
We
that's
really, you know, the commitment.
It's commitment.
It
That's the
is.
key. Mm-hmm.
The commitment is key.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and teaching folks how to teach. It is not a given. As
Hello.
we've seen, people know we have lots of information,
Yeah.
but we don't know how to teach.
Well, you know what? A lot of times teaching is just talking.
It is.
What they're saying, reach one, teach one.
Right.
So we need to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start having these conversations. So
And
folks,
stop being scared. Don't walk on eggshells.
not being scared. Anyway,
You said that
so
word?
much love to you
The
guys.
skirt.
So
We
much,
say down here skirt.
Yeah.
so much love.
The struggle
Mhm.
continues.
It does.
Struggle continues. They've got you, they've got me. So, you know, we get us on the front lines and but change is here. It's already here.
It's here to stay.
It's here to stay. Anyway, Gato, Deborah of the Claudia Jones School for Political Education. I thank
Hello.
you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks,
And
Vonda.
folks, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good
All power to
evening.
the people.
Good evening. You guys have been listening to Mo Money Mondays here on All About Us Global Media. That was something else, huh? Are you guys moved? Because I'm feeling that in my heart. I'm wowed. I'm absolutely wowed. Okay, guys. So I am here. I'm your host, Vonda. You guys can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Jameson Legacy Group. You know, here is where we help money make sense. So what's going on in your community? And what are you doing to be a part of the change? We need you. We need more people like you and me. It doesn't get done by itself, guys. Okay, so get to stepping. Anyway, I thank you so much of all the places you could have been. Always happy that you stopped by here Monday nights for Mo Money Mondays. We'll see you next week at 8 o'clock. Be well, stay safe, stay woke.
You're listening to All About Us Radio. We're live streaming 24/7, playing old school versus new school. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at AAU Media, and visit our website www.aaumedia.com. Call us at 1-833-369-1444, extension 1, and leave us an inspirational message or request. You're listening to All About Us Radio.